Are you grinding out 60, 70 hours a week, maybe 80 hours a week, but your business still isn't growing? Do you feel like every problem still lands on your desk, lands in your lap, and you just can't get out of firefighting mode no matter how many people you hire, how many leads you generate, how much you spend on software? What if you could actually pinpoint the one thing that's holding your business back, fix it, and then get your business flowing again? That's what we're going to talk about today. And you're listening to the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, spelled D-A-W-A-L-T. And over here at Construction Leading Edge, we are all about systematizing your construction business to eliminate chaos and maximize profit, freedom, and impact. So my team and I have helped over 400 construction companies eliminate chaos, grow their profits, and build teams that run without them. Here's what you're going to take away from today's episode: how to identify the number one constraint in your business and why you've probably been looking in the wrong place. A simple framework to uncover bottlenecks and clear them so growth can start again naturally. And we'll also talk about some pitfalls, some common myths that keep people stuck in firefighting mode. So this episode is all about shining a light into your business, how to find the number one constraint in your business so you can finally get unstuck and start scaling with confidence. Real quick, before we get into that, let me ask you this. Are you carrying project risk too long? Are you hoping that subs show up and hoping materials arrive on time? Are you doing one specific part of every project, but you're just doing it too late? Well, I've put together a resource for you. It's my free buyout playbook. It'll show you how to take control of costs, how to eliminate chaos before your projects even start, even how to add 3 to 7 points to your bottom line profit. So you can get your hands on that how to buy out a construction project playbook for free, at least for now, over at constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. BUYOUT. All right, so let's get to it. Imagine you're on a 4-lane highway, traffic is moving smoothly, and then suddenly it narrows down to 1 lane. It's all orange barrels and flashing lights. What happens? Everything slows down, right? There's a traffic jam. But here's the thing. Let's say you were the traffic engineer and you said, well, here's what we need to do. We need to add some more lanes, add another lane upstream of this, and that would solve it. Dumb, right? If you add lanes before the bottleneck, you just create a bigger traffic jam. Let's say somebody said, hey man, you should add some lanes after the bottleneck. That'll solve it. Well, that doesn't do any good at all. You could add lanes on either side of the bottleneck and it doesn't create any more capacity. In some cases, it just creates more problems. The cars still move at the speed of the narrowest point. Okay. It's limited by the speed of the narrowest point. And your business works exactly the same way. Growth continues until it hits a bottleneck. That's the 1-lane section. If you don't identify and fix that constraint, it doesn't matter how much capacity you add before or after that choke point or after that bottleneck, you're still stuck. Maybe you can look back on your business and think, wow, things grew so well and everything went so smoothly, and then it just stalled out. We hit this ceiling of complexity and margins started going down and chaos started going up and things just got complex. And I've heard from several people who've said things like that. Plus they've said there's something missing in my business and we just can't put our finger on it. So the real question is, how do you make sure you're actually working on the 1-lane problem, the real constraint? And it's really easy to see that. So you're in a helicopter looking down at an interstate. It's really easy to say there's the bottleneck. It's right there. But it's a lot more complicated to do in a business. So here's what it looks like when you don't solve that bottleneck. You're working 60 to 80 hours a week. The more you work, maybe things don't get any better. But you're working a lot of hours, but the business still isn't moving forward. You're not making progress. I've heard people say things like, it feels like my feet are stuck in quicksand. You've hired people, bought software, maybe chased more leads, but you're still putting out fires. You get 60 to 80 phone calls, text messages, and emails a day. And if you look at that, if you do the math, over a 10-hour day, you're getting 6 to 10 interruptions a day. Every few minutes, you're getting an interruption, a ping, a ding, a notification, a call. You can't get anything done. You know something's holding you back, but you just can't quite put your finger on it. If you're like a lot of people, you're willing to work hard, you're willing to put in the hours and the effort, but you want to make sure you're actually dedicating that time and effort to something that's going to move the needle for you. Maybe you have this nagging feeling that you know what the real bottleneck is, but you don't know how to fix it. We'll talk about what the real bottleneck may be. And if you're like a lot of people, here's what you're thinking about the impact of this. Here's the cost of staying stuck and not being able to solve this bottleneck. If you're like a lot of people, you just feel like there's not enough time in the day to do what you want. Maybe not even enough time in the day to touch the first thing on your to-do list. You start the day with a list of things that will move the needle for you. And then before you know it, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. You're completely drained and you haven't touched that to-do list. This creative part of you, the visionary part who's supposed to be driving the future, feels starved. There's a reason you started this business, and maybe you're so busy putting out fires and dealing with day-to-day problems and low rent activities, you don't have time to focus on doing the thing that you actually started this business for. Instead of steering the business, steering the ship, you're stuck answering the same questions over and over. Your team is fighting for your time. You feel like people are hijacking your agenda, and everything grinds to a halt if you're not there. If your business were a machine, then you are an integral part of that business. You're a cog in the machine. And when you step out or attempt to step out, then things just grind to a halt. And it's exhausting. You're working a lot of hours, and way too much of that time, 50, 60, 75% of your time every week is spent on dealing with low value activities, dealing with problems that should not have happened, re-explaining things, catching problems after the fact. And you have these things that happen and you're like, man, we've dealt with this so many times. We should have caught this. Why aren't we catching this? Why do we keep going around the same mountain over and over again? Meanwhile, opportunities are slipping away. You see a bigger future, but because you're trapped in the weeds, you're forced to say no to projects, or maybe you see opportunities just slip by that you could have attempted, but you either didn't have the time or the bandwidth or the confidence that your team could handle it. And you're missing out on impact, not to mention the effect on your health, your family, your kids are growing up. But what if it could look different? Think about this. Imagine starting your day and you have large uninterrupted blocks of time that you can spend focused on strategy, growth, innovation, not buried in emails and putting out fires. Imagine you finally have the mental bandwidth to think, to be creative, to be innovative. And what if you actually enjoyed running your business again? What if you had that enthusiasm, that excitement that you had back when you started this thing? What if you were actually able to do what you wanted to do when you started this business? And instead of taking work home and answering phone calls and emails at night, what if when you leave the office, you close the laptop, go home, and you've got confidence that your team has what they need and they can keep moving without you? And what if you could even take long weekends? Heck, what if you could take a 2-week vacation and know that things would run without you? And then when you look at your business, imagine that projects run smoothly. Your business is like a machine. Projects come into the hopper and they run smoothly through the sales process, into estimating, through execution, all the way to closeout with no surprises. And you have clarity and good visibility on what's going on. And then growth actually feels exciting instead of risky. You have this confidence to be able to grow because you know you have this machine in place. And you're no longer forced to turn down opportunities. You can take on more work. You can still deliver an exceptional client experience. Meanwhile, your team is operating in the green zone, not in the red zone. Hey, it's Todd here. We'll get back to the show in a second, but real quick, what if you're leaving profit on the table because there's a crucial phase of every construction project that you're already doing, but you're just doing it too late? If you're a custom home builder, a remodeler, or a commercial GC doing over $1 million a year, here's the hard truth. You could be carrying risk way too long, leaving your profits and your company exposed unnecessarily. Maybe you're scrambling to lock in subs and materials at the last minute, dealing with profit erosion because of unexpected cost increases and scope gaps. What if there's one step that your competitors are using to boost profits on their projects that you don't even know about? Well, that crucial phase is the buyout phase. A lot of small construction businesses don't have an effective buyout process or may not even know what it is. That's why I put together the How to Buy Out a Construction Project Playbook. It's a free step-by-step guide that shows you how to structure your buyout, how to lock in pricing, secure subs, and protect your profits before you even show up on site. There's a playbook you can download, a masterclass training video, and a buyout checklist you can just download, print, and start using on every project. Think about it. Would it be a bad idea to spend a few minutes to download a playbook that could add 3, 5, or 7 points to your bottom line net profit on every project? It's a simple adjustment that you can make in a short amount of time that has a huge impact potentially. So go grab your copy now over at constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. That's constructionleadingedge.com/BUYOUT. Now, let's get back to the episode. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They believe things like this. So back there are these pitfalls. And when I was a kid, back in the 80s, we had one of the first video game systems. It was the Atari system. Some of you young people, maybe you've seen the Atari system. The controller was this square that had a joystick and one red button, and that was it. And we had these really simple games. And one of my favorite games was called Pitfall. The character in this game was Pitfall Harry, and he was like this Indiana Jones type character, and he's swinging through the jungles, avoiding the pitfalls. And there were all these pits. And if you fell in the pit 3 times, you were dead, game over. So there are all of these pitfalls to running a construction business. And I want to highlight a couple of these pitfalls. I've fallen into these pitfalls. I've talked with, consulted, spoken to, trained 800 plus construction business owners. And these are some pitfalls to watch out for. The first pitfall reminds me of a Mark Twain quote. Mark Twain said, at least according to the internet, "It's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." I'll say that again. Mark Twain said, "It's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." So one of the biggest pitfalls that people fall into is they say, "I know exactly what the problem is." If you think you know what the problem is and you're sure you know what the problem is and you're working on the wrong problem, you're not going to get anywhere. So one of the pitfalls is being certain that you know what the problem is. Here's another one that a lot of people fall into is, "I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time to fix this. I just don't have time." And that's a trap, right? And frankly, if you don't have time, and if you look back over the past couple of years and you have never had time, your free time to work on the business is the same as it was a few years ago or shrinking, that is a flashing red light on the dashboard of your business. It's like the service engine light on your truck. It's a flashing red light saying you have a problem. If you don't have time to work on your business, that is a trap that you get stuck in. If you're stuck in that trap, "I don't have time," then you're never going to have time. And one of the traps people fall into is, when fill in the blank happens, then I'll work on this. When things slow down, when we have more people, when this happens, then I'll do that. I hear this a lot. When we get a little bigger, then we'll solve these problems. When I have the right person, when I have more time, when fill in the blank. And that's a fallacy, right? That's like saying, "Hey, future me is going to be better prepared to handle this than I am. So I'm going to kick the can down the road and going to be delusional and say, when I have more time, then I'm going to figure out how to have more time." Like that doesn't make sense. Here's a big one. This is an underlying pitfall, the thinking trap that a lot of people are stuck in. It's 3 words. Construction is chaos. It's something people believe to be true. And if you believe that construction is chaos, you'll just accept it. And you'll be stuck in that trap thinking, well, what can we do? Construction is chaos. Why bother scheduling projects? Construction is chaos. Why bother planning further out than today? Because construction is chaos. The truth is, chaos is a symptom of missing systems. It's not the nature of the industry. The truth is, this is going to sting, chaos is a choice. If you're dealing with chaos, it's a choice. But you're like, Todd, these customers of mine, you don't understand how difficult they are. Okay, who signed a contract with these customers? Oh, these projects that we do, they're so complex and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Who decided or who has accepted the kind of projects that you're doing? Todd, these people, these young people, these millennials, these Gen Xers, these baby boomers, these people on my team. Okay, who hired these people? And who continues to pay these people? And who's not training these people? This is a choice. Chaos is a choice. A couple of big ones that I'll talk about in a minute is the biggest problem is there are no good people. Young people don't want to work. There's a skilled labor shortage. People have been talking about the skilled labor shortage for a decade, maybe longer. We'll talk about that in a minute. And for a lot of you, you know that your biggest constraint is I just need more leads. Todd, if I just had more leads, then everything would be fine. I just need more leads. So we're going to talk about those examples in just a minute. So let's talk about the solution. What do we do? What's the framework for finding the number one constraint in your business? And as the business owner, it's your job to identify and clear the number one constraint in your business, right? That's your job. Who else is going to do it? That is your job. So here is the process. I'm going to give you a simple framework you can use to identify the number one constraint in your business. Wouldn't it be great if you had clarity on the number one thing that you need to focus your time and energy on so that your business will grow? Here's the process. The first step is let's look at the four main parts of your business. Most construction businesses are broken into four major functions: sales, pre-construction, construction, and finance. That's sort of the flow. The life cycle of the project is you sign a contract, it goes through some level of pre-construction to set up the project. I hope you have a pre-construction process. If not, that could be one of your biggest problems. Then it goes into construction where you actually build the project. And then there's finance and administrative that handles the invoicing and a lot of the back end part of that. So sales, pre-construction, construction, and finance. Let's look at those four main parts of your business. Step two is let's start at the beginning of the process. Let's look at sales and ask the question, if you doubled sales tomorrow, where would things break? If you double the amount of sales, whether it's the number of projects, the total value of those projects that you signed, you would ask yourself, what would break? And you start looking at, okay, let's say we doubled sales. What would happen in pre-construction? What would happen in estimating? What would happen to our selections process? If you're a custom home builder and remodeler, what would happen to the design process? Then let's say you doubled your sales. What would happen on the execution side? Do you have enough project managers, superintendents to be able to execute on that work? There's a pretty good chance that the constraint is not your ability to process invoices and things like that. But on the financial side, there is some working capital. If you doubled the amount of sales, do you have the working capital to be able to take on that work? Let's say you identify a constraint, a bottleneck. You doubled sales, you would look at your pre-construction process and say, maybe you're a custom home builder and you're building multi-million-dollar homes, and your pre-construction, let's say you're a design build contractor, and your design and pre-construction process takes several months currently, and there are lots of selections that need to be made. You might say, we would probably break down during pre-construction. It already takes us a long time to get designs pushed through. We're already struggling to get customers to make decisions. Then we end up starting projects without selections made, and that causes problems. And you would come up with this constraint, and then you would ask, why is that happening? Why is that happening? And then you would come up with an answer, and then you would ask again, why is that happening? And then you would ask again. It's similar to the 5 whys method for root cause analysis, but it's a little different. So you would just keep asking, why would this happen? Why would things break? What would break? Why would it break? And keep asking that until the answer is that's just it. And that last answer is your constraint. That's the constraint that you need to solve. That's the bottleneck, the one lane road of your highway that you need to focus your effort on. So the first step is look at the 4 main parts of your business. Step 2 is start at the beginning at sales. Step 3 is drill down with why. And then step 4 is fix the real constraint first. So don't add capacity before the bottleneck. So if you figured out, as is the case for a lot of custom home builders, that the biggest constraint is in pre-construction, then adding more capacity before that, in other words, trying to push more leads into that system is not a good idea. Also, focusing on adding capacity after that, like focusing on your execution, your construction, your operations team is not a good use of time or energy because it's not going to solve the constraint. So focus your energy where the throughput is actually limited. Then once you relieve that constraint, then the business starts flowing again. It grows organically until you hit the next constraint. That is the game of business growth.
Hey guys, Todd here. If you own a custom home building or remodeling business, let me ask you a few questions. First, how often do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about project details, financial issues, or something else about your business and you can't go back to sleep? Are you spending more than 10 hours a week working in the business, wearing multiple hats, putting out fires, and you feel like you can't work on your business as much as you want? Number 3, do you have enough documented systems and processes, or is it all in your head? Number 4, how good is your handoff of projects from the office to the field? Are you getting hammered by the just enough to start trap, doing just enough to start? And then lastly, do you feel stuck? Do you feel like you need to grow, but you're scared to, and you don't know how to do it? Maybe it feels like you need to hire, but you're afraid to make a mistake and you're worried you can't afford to hire somebody. Well, if any of that resonates with you, you're not alone. And if you want to make your business a source of more freedom and a source of less stress, to systematize your construction business. And our team here at Construction Leading Edge has helped over 300 builders and remodelers systematize their business, and we can help you too. The first step is to schedule a call with my team by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. That's constructionleadingedge.com/APPLY, or you can send a text to this number, 877-755-2410 with the word apply. That's 877-755-2410. Just text the word apply and we'll get back to you. Now, let's get back to our episode.
So let's run through a couple of examples. I mentioned the trap that a lot of people are in, which is I need more leads. All right. I went through this process and created a sales machine accelerator program a few months ago. And there were a lot of people who said, I just need more leads. If I had more leads, everything would be fine. That's all I need. I just need more leads. Let's take a look at that. Let's say you think you need more leads. All right. And what would happen if you doubled or tripled the number of leads next month? For a lot of people, they would convert some of those leads, more of those leads, into signed contracts. But for a lot of people, if the leads doubled or tripled, they wouldn't actually be able to get to them because they don't have the estimating capacity. For a lot of people, they would have a bunch of signed contracts and expectations set with customers and commitments made to customers. They would go into pre-construction and estimating and then get bogged down there. Details would slip through the cracks. Selections would drag out or maybe not get made. Customers would get frustrated and lose patience because it's taking too long and to get through the pre-construction process. The start date that they were promised gets missed. The job gets started and it's clunky, and because all of the details aren't well planned out. Why is that happening? And if you did enough digging and kept asking, why is this happening? Why are we having problems in pre-construction? You identify that pre-construction is the constraint, and then you would keep digging into that, and you would find out potentially, as is the case for a lot of people, it's because there is no pre-construction process to follow. When you get a signed contract, there's this void, this gap of nothingness. There's a missing phase called pre-construction, and everybody's focused on selling, and then everybody's focused on construction, and then there's this missing phase of pre-construction. So there's no pre-construction process to follow. It's not clear who is supposed to be doing these pre-construction activities, who's supposed to be getting all of the selections, who's supposed to be ordering long lead materials, who's actually accountable for getting permit applications in, who's supposed to be selecting subcontractors. And when that happens, people have to ask you every question. And then you may dig in and you may think, well, the constraint is we have no pre-construction process to follow. Well, let's ask that why question one more time. And if you're being honest and you ask the question, why don't we have a pre-construction process? You would say, it's because you don't know how to create those systems and you don't have time. Even if you did know how to do them and you did want to sit down and create a pre-construction process, you don't have time because you're already working 60 hours a week. So in this case, the constraint that needs to be solved is your lack of knowledge and maybe your lack of time. Or in some cases, you may have the knowledge, you may have the time, but if you're a classic visionary type, you love the idea of having processes and systems, but you hate the idea of doing it. When you sit down to try to create these things, you get overwhelmed and overtaken by shiny object syndrome. It's very likely the constraint is you. That might sting a little bit. Here's the other example. This is something else I hear a lot. Todd, all we need is some good people. If I could just hire a fill in the blank, all my problems would be solved. The biggest constraint is a lack of good people, a skilled labor shortage, etc. Let's take a look at that. I interviewed a gentleman named John Morris several years ago. He was at the time the president of a local chapter of the Associated Builders and Contractors. And he said something kind of shocking. He said, a lot of people, a lot of construction business owners say to me, if I could just hire 10 more people, everything would be great. They tell him, if I could hire 10 people tomorrow, I would. And John said, you would probably fail them and it could put you out of business. Why is that? Because let's say you were to hire that project manager, that estimator, that salesperson, that director of operations next week. Think about this. Do you have everything in place to set them up for success? Do you have clearly defined KPIs, clearly defined roles and responsibilities? Do you have the results that they're accountable for? Do you have a documented process for them to follow? Do you have time to train them? Well, if the answer is no, then the lack of good people is not the constraint. Something else is. Whatever you answered no to is the constraint. Why don't you have KPIs? Why don't you have roles and responsibilities? Why don't you have a documented process for them to follow? Because you either don't know how, you don't have time, or you're just not going to do it because that's not what you're wired for. That's your constraint. So here's what I would challenge you to do. Block out 1 hour on your calendar and go through this exercise. Rewind, go through that 4-step process, figure out your number one constraint. Then block out 2 hours a day, every day, to work on solving that constraint. And if you're thinking, Todd, there is no way I could spend 2 hours a day working on that, then you probably have your answer already. You don't have time. So let me ask you something. How long have you been thinking about getting out of firefighting? How long have you been thinking, I've got to put systems in place, I've got to get processes in this business? How long have you been saying, I am tired of being chained to this business? How long have you been thinking, I should have more free time, I should have more money, I should be making more money, I should have less stress, but I'm so slammed and buried that I don't even know where to start? Well, here's the reality. The cost of inaction is huge. Every week that you don't have these systems and processes in place, every week that you don't solve the number one constraint in your business means profit bleeds. There's a financial impact, missed opportunities that you can't get back. Lost sleep, stress, the price your family is paying because the business consumes too much of you. And then the fear that if nothing changes, your reputation suffers, or maybe your best people walk away. You know you need this. You've been listening to this podcast episode. Maybe you've been listening for months. Maybe you've been thinking, I've got to do something about this, but you've just been putting it off. Every time there's a mistake, you think, damn it, we could have prevented this if we had the right systems in place. Maybe your team's already asking for it. And they're nudging you saying, hey, we got to do something different. How are we going to solve this? But you just don't have time to figure it out for yourself. If you own a construction business, a custom home building, a remodeling, or a commercial general contracting business, and you're doing over $1 million in annual revenue, and you're stuck in day-to-day firefighting, you can't take a real vacation, and you feel like you own a job, not a business, this is for you, okay? I'm looking for 5 business owners this month, in the next 30 days, to help you systematize your business over the course of 8 weeks so your team runs the projects and you get your time back. If it's not a fit, we'll tell you fast and we'll point you in the next right step. So the next step for you, if you want to do something about this, if you know you need to do something about this, go schedule your free business evaluation call with my team. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. We'll dig into your business. We'll figure out where you're at. I'll help you identify the number one constraint share some insights with you, and lay out a roadmap that'll help you systematize your business. And then, if it makes sense, we can talk about what working with us looks like and how that might help you. So, we're only opening 5 spots over the next month. So, if you want to get off the hamster wheel, grab one of those spots now. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply.
Hey, before you go, if you're a custom builder, remodeler, or commercial GC doing over $1 million a year, what if you're missing one crucial step that could protect your margins before you even break ground? That's why I put together the free How to Buy Out a Construction Project Playbook. It's going to show you how to lock in costs, secure your subs, and protect your profit before jobs start. Would it be a bad idea to spend a few minutes to download a playbook that could add 3 to 7 points of net profit to your bottom line on every project? You can go get your copy of that playbook and that training for free at constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. There's no guarantees how long this will be free. It's available now for a limited time. That's constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. BUYOUT.